welcome to today's podcast. Today we got a talented, I don't even know how to, I feel like the word that's coming to mind is, no, I'm going to say it wrong.
Illegal.
No. Whoa. She went there. No, eclectic. Eclectic is the word that I was looking at. So eclectic being that there's multiple facets to you. There's, I feel like from what I've seen and what you've promoted out there, I feel like there's levels to you, there's complexity, there's intelligence, but at the same time, there's just flow. And I'm like, I feel like that's my projection over you, and that's my prophecy of sorts.
I'll receive
I'll let you introduce yourself as well as your pronouns.
Oh, kia ora. Well, thank you, fuck you conversationalists. It's a real honor and privilege to be on your podcast. And I'm Dujon Cullingford. He, him, born and raised in Hamilton in the little Housing New Zealand projects inside St. Andrews, which we call the Te Rapa to make it sound more Māori and cultural. But it is probably just St. Andrews.
Wait, did you go to St. Andrews Intermediate?
Yeah. I lived across the road.
You proper.
Yeah. Good growing up. And I mean, born and raised to parents who are both from England, Jamaican, European, and grew up with lots of sort of Māori and Pacifica friends. So it was a really cool upbringing. Yeah, but now I'm old with kids, been married over 10 years, and just work across the road.
Wait, I did not know you were saying, 10 years?
Yeah. What? Not that old.
Yeah, not obviously, but I didn't know that you were married for the 10 years. I feel like, so you got married young, right?
Oh, maybe 22, which is probably not that young, really, for a religious person.
Yeah, true.
You're right.
When you've been choosing the highway of abstinence, 22 is way overdue.
True.
Yes.
True. Wow, you chose that life as well.
Hey, I think that life chose me. I don't think anyone in their right mind would choose that life.
Facts.
Anyways.
All right, communities?
So the whole kind of basis of this is we wanted to explore communities or community that you kind of involved yourself, willingly or not, with throughout your life. And when we talk about community and communities, we're talking about an example that we often use is the Pacifica community. So society often tells us that there is just one community, but within that there are various communities that have various nuances between them, but often in a white Western Aotearoa society, we are told, oh, no, that's just one Pacifica community, disregarding those nuances between them. So we're curious, Dujon, what kind of community or communities have you been involved with throughout your life? And it can come from, childhood, now, whenever. It's totally your choice.
Prior to you as well? I mean, I feel like everything's kind of interconnected. So even prior to you, if you feel like that adds value to your story.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when I think of communities, I can think of lots of different communities I've belonged to, probably adopted into some of those communities, or found out about something haphazardly or mistakenly tripped into something, and it became a rabbit hole to something new. So I mean, apart from growing up and belonging to quite a cool tight-knit hood in the St. Andrews area, which I think was the best community, the community that I fell into when I was about 12 years old was the hip-hop community. But at that time, 20 years ago, which, that seems like a long time ago, but it was like a different generation of hip-hop. And when we say hip-hop, it sort of speaks to this cultural phenomenon where there were like graffiti artists, MCs, DJs, dancers, and we all used to sort of hang and practice and compete. And there was just this culture that went with it where we sort of had this interchange of skills and all that sort of thing. So... yeah, hip hop was my first community that I belonged to, and I still carry that and still very active in that community. And I think without hip hop community, I just wouldn't be where I am at all. Like I've met my wife in a dance class.
Shout out to her.
I don't think I would have half the skills that I have in my workplace if it wasn't for in the arts first. Having those experiences. That's the main community. At the moment, I'm obviously part of working community that seeks to support the community. So that's community development. But you can't really do community development if you don't understand what community is first. It's
Wait, can you just repeat that again? I feel like just for the people on the back, say it one more time.
Rewind the selector.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying you can't work in community without understanding what community is on all levels. You know, there's studying something, but then there's experientially, you know, going through something. Whoa, and then I don't think you can approach a community without actually knowing. Yeah, I mean,
so, like, what does community mean to you then? Like, when we talk about community, and like what you've said, like you can't work in it if you haven't been in it or understand it. What's your understanding of community?
Well, there are communities, you know, whether they be around ethnicity or like a subculture or a hobby group or that sort of thing. But then I also think there's the community at large, which is this overall community that holds all the other little communities within it. You know, so you could be talking about like a suburb or an actual place, a physical, tangible place. And I'm interested in both concepts of community, but the latter is quite interesting because to be able to work in a community, you have to be able to somehow look at all these different communities and find commonalities and things that would bring them together, which is not an easy task.
Nah,
you know?
it's not.
So you've got to have this transcending outlook on what brings community together. But I think one of the main things that makes community tick is just having the safety to be yourself. A lot of people talk about cultural competency, but cultural competency only really says you can feel competent to do your culture. It doesn't mean you're safe. We're a long way from cultural safety where you can be yourself, your loud self or introverted self and not attract any judgment from other people. But yeah, I think that's one big part of community amongst many others.
Yeah. No, I totally identify with that. There's a couple of communities that I'm involved with where there is a lot of judgment. And I think that like queer community is one of the communities that I can identify with and where I have seen firsthand that is a community within the wider society that does attack from within itself.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, the gays over there, the lesbians over there, and everyone else can just like fuck off, pretty much. So it's really interesting that you bring up safety because I think sometimes people just take for granted their community and don't feel safe, but then they're like, oh, but I have to identify with that because I don't identify with the other.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's really hard. It's
hard to navigate and constantly push levers and pull knobs and, you know, just navigating in general is tiresome. And then on top of defending or reiterating or explaining or breaking down things, you know, you've got all these other layers before you can just chill out and be yourself. And that's the difficult part about probably living in a very conservative society that passes a lot of judgment, you know.
And I feel like also like the opposite of that as well is also a community of rebellions, like people who don't want to belong to a community. And I feel like I just came to this understanding as well, is that because you don't want to belong to a community, you also form an unofficial community of not belonging.
Yeah.
And I feel like that not belonging group is getting bigger.
Yeah, and I actually really like that group. I mean, that can be positive or negative, but like I know, for example, just growing up in the hood, didn't really feel like I belonged in a lot of places, and especially having parents that are, you know, interracial, you already get looked at sideways, and they also, you know, immigrated here. And being pohara on top of all that, and you know, living in the hood. So yeah, I think that's what drew me into hip hop. When I saw a bunch of misfits getting together around a common cause, which was dance, it was like, yeah, I can get down with that. And at the time, they probably mocked me, but I didn't hear it. So I just, you know, thought, okay, I'm doing it right. I can hang with these people, even though they're a couple of years older, the bigger kids in the intermediate school. They sort of let me hang out with them and dance with them, and yeah. Those misfit cultures then sometimes morph into something bigger and better anyways, you know. All music styles started that way, where they sort of peeled off a mainstream branch, done their own thing, and it was like frowned upon. Then all of a sudden, 10 years later, was the big genre on the mainstream charts or whatever. It's quite interesting.
Wait, so do you reckon that pattern has happened all through society and now we just have different vehicles of accessing that?
Man, I'm not sure, but that sounds good.
No, for real, because I'm like, if you think about society, I feel like even languages and communication has nuance to a point where it's like now, like Kelsey and Joe can make a podcast, like you know, like so I'm like, I feel like that copy and paste is like kind of like the current recipe that everyone's kind of following, but like we just don't know it.
Yeah, well, I can only speak of music and dance, but I know, for example, most dance styles have come from someone who's feeling oppressed. But out of the Great Depression came this crazy expression of, you know, freedom and maybe it coincided with a new dance or like a music style coming out or whatever. But you pretty much any of the street dance styles have come out of something that's not so nice in a cultural political expression. And even the same with music, you know, punk came from this anarchy, you know, rebelling against the government, anti-authority sort of thing. You know, rock and roll was seen the same way, you know, when it started. Blues, jazz, you know, all these music styles probably weren't appreciated when they're in the formative stages. But yeah,
no, yeah, pressure creates diamonds. So
ooh, there it is, the whakatauki of the hour.
The diamond's right here though. The gym and the diamond's right here though. All right, wait. So tell us more about going into hip hop. Like, did it matter what hip hop was already looking like, and what could you see representation of people like you in hip hop at the moment at that time when you jumped in?
So the funny thing was back then. It was the year 2000. I'm 12 years old, and I'm in the bilingual class too. So I'm already the token white boy on the Māori class, which I really enjoyed. I always wanted to learn more about Te Ao Māori, and I was really lucky to be in that class. But yeah, it was that year where I accompanied my dad to a band practice. He's a drummer, and he was helping out with this sort of youth ministry sort of thing. He was just filling in drumming. I went along with him on a Saturday over in Korero in the hood. And then after that, I don't know what we're doing. I was just hanging out with my dad, you know. We went over to Korero School, the primary school hall, and there was just dancers all over the place. And the only reference or bearing I had for this is watching Beat Street, the movie that came out in 1984, you know, where it's all about breaking and hip hop. And my dad had taped that on TV. So when I saw it in real life, I was like, whoa.
You're giving us all types of throwbacks.
Yeah, VHS.
Yeah, literally, yeah. But at that time, yeah, it was interesting hip hop in New Zealand, well, at least for me. It was like Māori, Pacifica, a couple white people, and maybe some randoms in there. But like now it's completely different, it's diverse. But at the time, no, in Hamilton it was mainly Māori, and it was mainly like several whānau all related to each other that were doing it, you know? So yeah, it was an interesting mix, but it was the best. It was the best, yeah.
So like, I guess hearing the music and moving to the beat and like being a part of that culture wasn't based on actual color, but based on how you could keep up with the beat or something like that.
Definitely. Yeah, people were really friendly. You know, you come in there and you obviously weren't really part of their culture because you couldn't move that way yet, or you were dressed square, whatever. So yeah, people would come over to you and say, hey, I'll teach you some moves. You know, it's not like we had to sign up for a class and pay $20 for a term or that sort of thing. It was uninstitutional. Yeah. Someone just put a tape on, you know, let it run through and change it over, throw out some mats on the ground, and people would just practice and have their own clusters of conversations throughout the hall. You know, so you just jump into one. It was just the best experience of culture to have at that age. Yeah. You probably wouldn't recognize it, but you just sort of slip into this river and you just all of a sudden downstream, you know, hanging out with people, laughing, learning moves. And a few months later, you've actually learned 50 moves and you're competing all of a sudden. And whoa, you know, it's just a really moving, transformational culture. You know, you never sign up for anything. You're just learning. It's a bit like kung fu, you know, you get a master and you're under them all of a sudden, and you're fighting someone that you don't know of, but you know that they're mean, so you need to beat them. And yeah, it's really cool, really beautiful.
It seems like, from what you've said and from what I've observed, because I dabbled in that for a little while.
Oh, tell us.
Do we want to go there?
No.
Break out the Bebo archives.
Oh my gosh. No. No, I was with Fusion Dance Company for a little while.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Fusion.
Yeah, they were the top.
Yeah. I wasn't in like
just a disclaimer, I didn't make the X squad.
Oh, were you in the social leagues of Fusion Dance Company?
Anyway, I think Fusion was kind of the first from what I observed, because one of the first ways that hip hop was kind of being commercialized, and it seems like now hip hop is taught alongside like jazz and ballet and like all these other things that like what I perceive to be middle upper class white dance companies, who are there for competition purposes.
Yeah.
What's your opinion of like the development of that space and the commercialization of hip hop?
Oh, it's a point of tension and backwards and forwards between lots of us dancers, and so long story short, I was into, well, people call it breakdancing, I call it breaking, which is the original dance form of hip hop culture. But after a few years of doing it, I got into a crew with a whole bunch of people from Hamilton, but our crew was based in Wellington area, and then we started to win, and I won a bunch of the national one-on-one titles here. So, and we were a really cool crew, a lot of camaraderie, but at the same time, I think we developed, a sense of piety, of a little bit of elitism, and we were the Pharisees amongst our little scene for a while. And at that point, that was the point where we were like, this is the hip-hop dance. Anything else is not real hip-hop. We were really the Bible bashers of our dance scene for a while. But after a few more years, after maturing, and you just learn a bit more about life, I realized, man, we've really been on the wrong trajectory the whole time. There's all these people that are just wanting to
back
dance.
It up. What?
Yeah.
What was that realization like?
Well, it was a game changer and a half. So basically what happened over here in Hamilton, Palace had come down to Hamilton and they had created a studio. And I said to some of my peeps, hey, let's take our dance form for free over there, just so we can show that we are honoring their dancing, their dance style, and that we come in peace, I mean, it sounds random, but lots of dance styles have beef because for whatever reason. So yeah, that was the start of the journey. Then I happened to win a national comp here and compete in Sydney. And after our battles were done and I got roasted, there was another event, and it was called an all-style battle. And that's literally a battle that pulls on all styles of dancing, which of course for little old me was like, what? How can you bring everyone together with such freedom under the one roof, at the same time? And that's
Is that like the mixed martial arts of like
honest, the UFC of dance? Yeah, pretty much. And the way they done it in Sydney was like, okay, we have 4 teams, but all the main dance studios are represented through all the teams. So there might be 8 people from 8 different studios. And the DJ would play, they might just chuck on some 90s R&B, and you don't know what you're going to get. You just have to dance, and you got to bond with your teammates and cross over that chasm between dance styles and merge and do routines. And anyways, so from that point on, just my mind flipped around how to view not only my discipline that I come from as dancing, but all disciplines as together, and what are the common threads that link us all together. Yeah, quite interesting.
No, it is.
But nerdy, but...
No, it's like I find that stuff so interesting only because to me it makes so I describe it like singers harmonizing. So to me, like these are humans that have put effort, energy, and time into harmonizing, and I'm like, that could go for communities, that could go for churches, that could go for organizations and institutes. Like to me, when I see like disciplines evolving like that and collaborating and uniting and producing this massive different artwork, I'm like, that's love.
Yes.
That to me is human love. That's like you've dedicated like to perform at a certain space like in the now. And I'm like, we're only gifted the now. So like everything that I've said is going to be in the past. And I'm like, I get so like, I don't know, I'm probably always operating in philosophical lands, but like to me, that's the juice of why I exist. Like I need, like that needs to happen in my existence. Like, or at least I have to be a part of making that come alive.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the essence. I agree with of community, looking for intersections, and I feel like the more people go into their own independence in a negative way, like they sort of hone in on something that they're really into, or I don't know, they also move away from other people. And if we can be less fragmented, and we can find intersections and crossroads together, I think incredible things will happen. And we also will have the chance to fuse and experiment, and experience different things. I mean, it's quite funny. We get into something and then it becomes our identity, and then we lord it over anyone else that wants to step on our fragile selves.
Stop. You're too good. And
Honestly, it's pretty scary though.
It actually is though, because I think a lot of us, like, well, I've been telling Kelsey a lot, everyone's lost. And like even our scientists are lost. They're finding answers. They're diving into the deep to find answers, and they speak the language of science, which is a different language to articulate and find out what is the meaning of life and what is the purpose of life. So for me, I'm like, if everyone is lost, should we not turn to each other for support?
Yeah.
And that's a massive generalization. And like, I feel like if you know what I'm on about, you know, but if you don't know what I'm on about, just don't be a dick. Like, be kind, because everyone's lost. Like, everyone's literally finding answers, trying to figure out how it goes. And yeah, there's many roads to the top of the mountain. But I feel like with you and dancing, it's almost like a miniature community, or like, you know, and like your baby is the final performance, but that's not the end, because it's like there's uffing all the way to the final performance. And then even after the performance, man, all the like ups and downs, someone's ankles hurt, someone missed the move, you know, like all of those beauty, like, and it's like, I remember when I watched, I'm doing a little sidetrack, but I remember when I watched The Royal Family and that girl fell. And I think everyone remember when that girl fell. And and literally, like, I think everyone gave her so much hate, but they still won. And in my head, I'm like...
Do you think it's because of expectation on, I know, particularly royal family?
It's a big part of dance. And this is something that a lot of us are trying to explore in New Zealand dance and across the world. But it's that... you know, everyone has their own lanes, and so no one should cast any judgment around, you know, whether someone wants to just be in a competitive lane or a commercial lane where they may be headed to more commercial dance for media, or whether they're just down with going out and improvising and freestyling and just connecting with their buddies. Like, there's so much streams, but which we are creating a lot more crossroads between the different streams, and we're seeing, say, some of these people who might have just only known commercial or studio dancing come into maybe some freestyle or some battles, or just having fun and being a bit more lighthearted, and they're really enjoying it. And then vice versa, people that might be freestyling are now maybe doing an ad and are really enjoying that. Okay, I need to learn a script. And so it's just making sure people get a good experience, a double side of the coin experience for dance, because all these dance forms have usually come from a different country with a different style of music and a different sort of cultural discourse, and most of that gets left out when you just learn it in the studio. So unless your teacher's wise enough to take you on an experience, you're just learning a lot of pattern steps, and you're probably gearing up, like you said, Kelsey, for a competition, which is great, but it's just one part of a big story. Yeah,
for sure.
Wow. And wait, do you reckon they teach like dance as a discipline in university, and like how that interconnects with like societal issues? Do you reckon that's a discipline that needs to be alive, or already is alive?
Yeah, there's a lot of room for exploration and discovery around arts as therapy, arts as a lens for other sectors and disciplines. And arts conveniently gets left off the map, and with lots of, like, for example, you know, in school, you know, often talk about, okay, we need to push these curriculum areas, but, you know, the arts is usually sometimes later in the back. It's the last kid on the block that gets picked for the, you know, the basketball team sometimes. So, yeah, I just think, and I know many other people in Hamilton and around New Zealand think that art should be in a more of a central space, because I think the research shows in school, for example, if you have good experiences with arts, it opens up your mind to do better in maths, English, and other core curriculum areas. But when you have the sort of absence of creativity, you know, your other core curriculum areas go down. You're not as successful in them, which is quite interesting. Yeah. Plus, music, I mean, is Harvard's done studies on music and talking about how powerful it is. You know, it writes memories, ingrains memories into your brain or whatever 9 times faster than the next thing that does. Like, that's why, you know, you could be 90 and still reciting your nursery rhymes or whatever, even though you've forgotten your husband's name.
I mean, the priorities, right?
yeah. The bow black sheep.
The oranges of that as well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
All right. And then wait, so Because to me, like the way that I see art is, it's like when we talk about queer people having to come out, I feel like arts is like the stepping stone for people who are not queer to go and find out who they are as individuals and dive into identity. And it's like, to me, I'm like, don't use art like that. Like, don't use art and abuse art and exploit art when you can do the hard work by yourself, because every queer person does it.
That's quite interesting.
With or without art, every queer person has to go through that journey of self-discovery to find who self is. And I'm not saying that only queer people do it, but I'm just saying that everyone leans on art to find self in terms of identity. And in my head, I'm like, that's not what art's meant for. Like, the art's not your vehicle to access identity from an institutionalized perspective. Like, art's there to represent society and all its flaws and glory in a different lens or a different communication channel from my perspective.
It's an interesting perspective. I like hearing different people's opinions on arts, because arts is so subjective and so wide open, and there's so many ways to experience the arts. Like, from what I've found is that I probably express myself in a narrow way. And I didn't know I was capable of dancing, when I was in Form 2, which about 12 years old, or 11 years old, sorry. Our dance teacher at middle school took us through a dance module. We'd done like line dancing.
Oh,
come on. Love that.
I think we'd done square dancing, and then she took us through hip hop dancing. I didn't know what that was. And, we just done some very basic steps, but actually was right, like, when it comes to all that sort of out there stuff, I was never good at any of that. I couldn't sing or anything. I would go for the play, audition, but I'd get roasted. I'd become a tree.
I tried it too. I was an animal.
Out here.
Yeah. So, but I mean, what I'm getting to is when I thought, oh, I can do this. And then when I got into dancing later on, I felt, wow, this is the most meaningful way for me to express myself. Before I met the arts, I actually had this limited way to express myself. Sure, I could do a little bit of creative writing here and there, or maybe one or two other things, but it really became an outlet for me to let loose and to be introspective and see myself in a different way. And then, just hearing certain songs would, make me feel a different type of way. And then my movement would come out and I'd learn more about myself. And so for me, the arts was just an exploration of myself. Yeah. I didn't see it as like maybe an external force, but it's just,
Married.
So for me, it just, what I'm getting to say is like, I was able to explore myself better through the aid of arts, but I wouldn't know any better at that time, I think. Yeah, I don't know if that's a helpful answer, but
that makes sense. There's a bridge between what you said and what I said, for sure.
So I think a lot of people find their, possibly their identity is fueled by dabbling in arts, because arts is so liberal and it gets you to think different ways, and then all of a sudden you think, oh, I'm this way. No one told me that before, or I didn't know. But it might have been like a reaffirmation you got from attending an event, or I don't know. I'm not sure, but you know what I'm saying. It's an interesting aid. Yeah.
What were you saying?
I totally identify with what you said, Dujon, and totally disagree with what you said, Joseph.
Go hard. That's what we're here to do.
Because, like, for myself, through, like, that 14 to 18 period, I really, really heavily invested myself into my art at school, because that was something that I could express myself through without having to talk to anybody about it. And, like, I could I could visually represent this heavy shit that was going on in my life without actually having to verbalize it at all. And that was a way that I could just like deal with my shit.
Yeah.
And it was a way that I could then identify myself with like, oh, okay, like that is happening to me in my world and I'm subjected to that, but that is not who I am. And like art gave me a way to like express it, get it out so I could move on with my life. And then even past that, like when I dealt with all that crap, past that into tertiary study, which is the academia world of arts, because I studied photography, I was able to further explore myself and my community through photography. So I kind of identify with like being, I would never ever call myself an artist because I think it's a bit pretentious. But people label me as an artist or label me as a photographer, and I'm just using my craft to explore myself and my identity and give those people a platform. But I would call this a creative outlet too, like
100%.
podcasting and offering platforms for people to come through and talk about whatever they want to talk about. You know,
That's cool.
yeah,
it's good to hear. Different perspectives on the arts and how we all perceive the arts. And I know firsthand in our dance crew that we've often had people that actually hadn't stuck with us for long, but the experiences were good and they maybe just learnt some skills that they could transfer to whatever the next stage in life was.
Yeah.
You might not have been that competitive dancer, or you might not have even attended any battles with us, or you might have only come with us for a few months, but hopefully you had a few laughs, learn a little bit more about yourself and got better fashion. Oh,
oh
no.
Dress for your body, okay? Don't dress for the trend. I swear.
Yeah.
The worst part. The worst part for me. No, so I guess to me, the only reason why I don't want people to use art as an excuse to identify, like to find identity, because I feel like that's literally been used and abused, where we're like using art.
But do you think it is because it works?
Or, well, what? Okay, let's throw this on the different end then. What about all the people who can't afford art? What about all the people who can't afford to go to school and can't afford photography, and what about people who can't afford to go to dance classes or kind of all of those things, or can't afford art in general? So there's different identities of art, but I feel like finding out self is like a massive wide journey as well, kind of like what you're saying, and we shouldn't use and abuse art as the only vehicle. There's so many other various ways to tackle it.
See, I think that what you and Kelsey are saying, when you're talking about the commercialization of dance, that's what you're talking about, the commercialization of art forms in general, because it's, can be sometimes associated with a higher class or higher way of thinking, or it's esoteric, or
You're more successful in that space if you have a degree.
There's only a few coloured people who are actually embraced for their self and their entirety, and it's like, oh, okay, no, that's not trained, that's not classical, that's not and I'm like, in my head I'm like, wait, you didn't create art. You don't know the full process of having to figure out what art is outside of your institutes, outside of your like conditionings, and then you're telling us that we are not art.
That's the part I hate the most. That happens a lot.
Oh man, there's so many artists out there that we're asleep on because they don't have the amplification, or they don't have the team, or they don't have all of these things, and I'm like, that's the part. So I'm not talking about art as like this. I think there's a specific niche that I'm talking about.
I think you're talking about the social constructs that contain some of these arts fields too. Like if you step into I don't know, ballet, there is a particular way that you should be or act or dress or behave. You need a particular type of
size.
That's probably a more extreme form of dance, whereas some dances are a bit more, largely accepting of different kinds of people. But, every dance, every music style, every arts expression has a different social construct, and some of them are so bad. They just promote things that are not healthy for a community. So I think I know what you're saying there, because
it's kind of like another way that I've described this is Michael Jordan. Like, no one knew that he was such a focused person, but also another word for focus was dick. Like, everyone didn't, like, some people didn't actually like him as an athlete or as a thing, and I'm like, okay, you choose, like, ballerina focus, or not a ballerina, and you choose a different dance style. But like, I think we're not talking about the inequities that exist outside of art, because like for art's sake, it has to be a certain way, and I feel like that's where we go. We can bring indigenous art, we can bring indigenous forms of art, and that's still like almost like it's out there. We've been here, we've been doing the hard work. We just haven't been given the same amplification and recognition.
Yes, you did right. I think arts can easily be hijacked and gentrified. I would say that hip hop dance is a good example of that. that, you know, it's become institutionalized really fast. It has a lot of studios around the country, and there's almost no way, if you don't have the cash, to sign up unless you've got a manager or someone in the studio that's you can give a scholarship. You're going to be paying $100 minimum for a term, you know, and you've got to also pay probably your fashion or getting to competitions and all the rest of it. So yeah, I understand what you're saying completely, especially coming into a dance form that money was not an issue. We didn't dance in the studio. We danced on the grass or outside our dairy. You know, all we needed was some batteries for some music, a piece of carpet or lino that we dragged around for several years. You know, we danced on concrete. You know, I mean, our dance form, I really love it because it just set me up to appreciate, the little things, I think. Because, some of those dance forms now are not accessible. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about, accessibility.
Do you think, though, that they're not accessible because what society is telling us is successful in those spaces is that competition or that blah, 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 or, you know, like going to classes. If you're not going to classes, are you even dancing?
Definitely.
Like,
are you an artist?
What?
Yeah. Well, for example, both my wife and I dance, and she's danced for a long time, I've danced for a long time. And so our daughter's 6 years old, and everyone would assume that we've got her in dance classes, but we don't. I mean, we dance a lot at home, and we're around a lot of cultural things, people, music, dance. But the reason personally why I haven't put her in a dance class is because, everything is geared towards competition. Yeah. I wanted to be in a class where she can let loose, have fun, and sort of maybe a loosely facilitated class where people guide the students to explore themselves, to get in tune with the music, and maybe teach a few moves, but not the syllabus that is so rigid that actually strips away the culture and the politics of the dance and where it's come from, and teaches this whitewashed or basic or superficial version of the dance. And I think that's in New Zealand where we have gone wrong and sometimes go wrong a little bit. We just place emphasis on maybe wrong parts of the dance, and then people go through the dance journey maybe for a couple of years, they go out the other side and they think, oh, well, you know, I've done my dance scene, that was right. I probably will never go back there, but they've only actually ever experienced, you know, a portion of that dance. So if you were to ask them, hey, have you ever experienced A, B, and C? Oh, no, we only done X, Y, Z, you know? Oh, I wonder what it would be like if they had explored themselves in a different way, or, you know, danced to some different music. They went out and just jammed with some friends or something. It's quite interesting.
I love the organic way that that like your dance crew like, you know, came to fruition. Like that's, I guess to me, it's always that extra motivation when you know that you're there for yourself as well as other people are there for themselves to get better, you know. And I feel like that's the point where, like, was there ever a time where you were like, nah, I don't want to dance anymore?
Oh, no, never, where I intentionally didn't want to dance. I mean, I'm probably the least active now that I have been in 20 years, but and I'm okay with that. But I would say I've been super active up until maybe 2 years ago. But I'll still throw down and thrash most people.
Yeah, I want to see that.
You're same.
But I mean, the way our dance crew, the one I'm in now, the local one that's called the Unites, started was quite funny though. Like when Shade and I got married in 2010, we moved over to Zimbabwe, and I was sort of holding down the local practice spot. That's so anyone can come and go in our jams. We call it a jam, which is unusual. Most dance styles do not have jams, but we have a jam. Anyone can come. Don't pay anything on the door. You just come in and you learn from us informally, and we're also practicing, and we've got music on loud, and we're just having fun. So when I left, I sort of thought, I don't know what's going to happen to the dance scene, you know, our little dance scene. But my little brother, Annie and Harms, who I used to work with, at the time I came back, there was a dance crew. Whoa, you know, it just took me to get out of the way. But what was cool about the dance crew is that it just had completely different people and ethnicities in it. So, I mean, nowadays we've got someone from Congo, someone from Mongolia, you know, we've got Maori, Pacifica, we've got Chinese, we've got different types of people, but we're all bonded through dance, and we're all local people that, you know, appreciate community. So it's quite interesting.
Hard.
I love it.
There's levels to that, but
same. I'm like, whoa.
Where do I go about this? So wait, when did you officially have the confidence to call yourself a dancer?
Oh, I can't remember exactly when I said, hey, I'm a dancer, but I remember the time where I was in middle school trying to dance in a lunchtime hour in the hall, and a teacher walked past and thought I was having a seizure because I wasn't quite yet at dancer level.
How did that make you feel?
At the time, I didn't think anything of it, but when she walked away, I sort of scratched my head, and now I laugh about it. But I was trying some move on the ground, maybe like a windmill, and failing miserably. So she thought I was just flapping around on the ground, incapable to lift myself up, get past my shoulder roll or whatever. But yeah, I think quite early on, we're lucky we had X-Air and some events around Hamilton that had battles. So by us traveling and being around better dancers, we were able to reaffirm ourselves that, yeah, we're part of this scene, we're B-boys or B-girls or whatever we called ourselves. Yeah. It's quite fun back then. Life was simple.
Yeah. Going back to when you were 12 and you just moved, you just got into the scene. What was the support around you that you're oh yeah, I want to be involved here? Yeah,
I think from the jump was, my parents were awesome for all our siblings in terms of encouraging expression. So just growing up, having a Jamaican dad, we're listening to a lot of music, reggae, ska, dub, deep music, from that sort of Caribbean diaspora through the Americas and British reggae as well. So that was nice. You're growing up with music and just general old school music, and mum liked music too, which is great. And then when we got into dancing, all of our siblings at one point got into dancing, it was never discouraged for starters, It was yeah, do your thing. And so after school, instead of, playing whatever other kids do, we'd be dancing. And we'd be dancing every weekend, and we'd be dancing every, it just took over our lives. And it was never, hey, you should be doing this instead of that. It was just an act of sort of constant encouragement from our parents to get involved. And we didn't have a lot of cash growing up, but I remember when I started to get serious, maybe about 15 or 16, and I had to get to Wellington to train with my crew for a couple of days before we had a national competition. I just remember my mum having a little bit of money from tax, got the church taxes back, that tithe money back or something. And she just, do your thing. And which was not an easy feat at that point, because we didn't have, a lot of food in the cupboards at some points. So for her to back me and give me money to go better myself and dance, I just take my hat off to my parents for that. But yeah, that's my initial support, having my family there. But the friends that you gain through dance, yeah, they were definitely the next biggest driving factor for staying involved. So I basically I danced with friends from my hood. So I grew up on Heath Street, and then there were Jameson Crescent and Kroll Cres, which we call Criminal Cres. Yep. And all our dance crew were from those three streets. Yeah. In the corner of Bryan Road. So there were about 10 of us. And, just your normal roaming around 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, that you'd see in any neighborhood. But we sort of caught that hip-hop fever for a time. So all of us danced at a time. And then maybe after a year or two, a few would drop off. And then there were a core group of us, 4 or 5 of us that just went for a few years. And then I ended up being the only one. But that crew, they were everything. When you got a crew of people when you're already young, it was really cool at that age to and all of the guys were older than me, 2-3 years older than me, bigger than me, funnier than me. So I really felt like that little white boy they adopted into their whānau,
Cute.
It was really fun.
Do you still see any of them now?
Yeah, every now and then, but I
do you ever throw down and just be like, look at me?
Nah. I'll tell you what, they were all way better than me, and I think they didn't take me seriously at the start because I wasn't really naturally talented. Some of them were able to pick up things so fast. Yeah. But they didn't stick at it. I was like, man, if you stuck at it, you would have been the champ, You would have been amazing. But for whatever reason, they, went into different things or had families or got locked up or other things.
Other career choices.
Yes. Distinguished career choices.
All right. Give us your top 3 songs that you're jamming to right now.
Oh, top 3. So I'm assuming you guys have a go-to playlist. Yeah. Okay. So I have one that's 50 songs. That, it's not too big. It just rotates all the time. So I'll just
wait. You don't have a go-to playlist?
I do. Sorry. But I keep swapping songs out because you get sick of a song after 2 or 3 weeks and you got to find something else. So my latest songs. I've been getting into Moonchild. Do you guys know Moonchild?
No.
So it's this little R&B trio, I think, from LA area. Just beautiful, beautiful music.
So Moonchild, what's the song?
Well, the latest album is called. Oh, I should know this, but I'll just check it real quick. Little Ghost.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw them on Tiny Desk on YouTube one day. You know,
Love Tiny
Just,
Desk.
you know,
I have seen them.
just really beautiful.
I love Tiny Discs. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, so I'm feeling a bunch of their songs at the moment, and sorry, I'm just gonna check the song out. It's called "I Know" by Raquel Rodriguez and Amber Navran. Amber is like the lead singer of Moonchild. Yeah, but they're a multi-instrumentalist group, so they'll be singing next minute playing the sax, next minute jamming the flute or whatever.
Okay, I gotta check it out.
Yeah. But
Sounds
also Sounds of Blackness. That's an old school '90s group, sort of gospel R&B, and they got a track called Optimistic. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna need to jump into that.
We'll link these down below too.
Yeah. And one more, the third one. Do you guys know Herbs?
Yeah.
So they've got a song called "On My Mind," and it's this really beautiful soul track from the early '80s New Zealand soul track.
Okay, you mentioned that your dad's got an eclectic range of music as well. What is reggae to you then?
Oh, I'm not really political about reggae like my dad is. Like,
okay.
yeah.
You
I
go.
mean, given that he's born and raised in London area, and they had a strong reggae scene. His perspective on reggae obviously is a bit different to like the New Zealand barbecue reggae tunes. But to me personally, I like quite a lot of reggae. You know, like everything. I'm quite happy about it. But I really love that New Zealand we have our own Asian style. You know, our own approach to reggae, and that is unique. I really love that. Yeah. What about you guys? Do you listen to reggae?
Well, I personally do. Reggae's reggae for me is my Christmas carols. Like I don't, and in my household we don't have Christmas carols. We have UB40 and
Yes.
Bob and all the uncles.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Christmas is without reggae, but at the same time, I think it was Quina's like ignorance disclaimer here, but it was so stink for me to really love and uplift UB40 and then to realize that Ali Campbell was not like Caribbean or Jamaican or like somewhere from that space. But I was like, I think I took like that little mental break, like, should I like this music or not?
Yeah. Oh,
But
honestly,
that's my like extent. Like I love New Zealand reggae. Obviously been to One Love and everything like that. But I feel like going to the festival and experiencing the song on my own are two different things. Like I love the festivals and I love the vibes, but I like listening to the song and then seeing what the song evokes in me.
Yeah.
And that's like, that to me is the beautiful part of listening to music or just watching art in general.
Hearing what that singer has to say and what their words are. And I mean, everything in my life involves music. I mean, it might just be that I'm listening to music on the way to work or in the office with headphones on the way back. But I learned so much from music, and as I'm sure you guys do. And then it gets me thinking, and then I approach work or life differently, you know? Yeah. And in fact, I was thinking about it today. Like, I sort of view life as a Spotify playlist in a way, you know, you have lived experiences and you go through different communities and have different experiences, but you sort of pick and choose, you know, what you want to put in your day-to-day Spotify playlists. You know, there might be an album that you really love, but in fact, there's only two real standout songs. So you just take those two songs and put them onto your everyday playlist, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, unheart the rest of the album.
This is how I know you're old school, because you still speak of albums as though like they're a piece of work, like, you know, like
They
well, obviously, but it's like I feel like these kids only know single tracks, so I'm like, you don't know what an album is. Like I went through the whole album to figure out which song was my favorite.
Yeah, and you had to give it a few listens through just to find something, or something emerges that you didn't really hear before. Wow, that song was not the hit track, but
wait,
goes hard.
What's that alien sound in the background? Like, this is me all the time when I'm like, was that like a whale? Like, what was that?
Who's on backing vocals? That sounds good.
The first time I listened to it's a classic popping track, but like it starts with Z.
Zapp and Roger.
Wait,
What is it? More bounce to the ounce, or
it's the most generic song. There's
I know what you're talking about.
I Want to Be Your Man.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That song, literally, in my love the lyrics and everything like that. But at the same time, the music in the background and what was popping off on the sides, I'm like, what's happening?
There's twinkly noises at the start.
But I could imagine you doing a whole routine, just freestyling to the background music and not following the lyrics at all.
Yeah. That's the tricky thing. I mean, I DJ as well, and we love music so much that sometimes you're playing like new school rap, not realizing what the words are saying because you're all about the beat, or oh, that's not appropriate. Yeah, that happens often.
Just plug in WAP right there.
Yeah. Clean version.
All right. So what does ideal support look like for you in communities? Or in community in general, for someone who's involved in various different community, as an adult, what does support look like for community from your perspective?
I think whatever community you belong to, you need cheerleaders in your life, people that will just champion you, champion your cause, pull out the gold in you. I really think there's something about pulling out the gold and self-discovery, actually going deep, mining, your mind and your soul and finding yourself. And if you've got people around you that are on a similar journey, able to go hand in hand with you, that's really important. I mean, regardless of what community you belong to, that's got to be a winner, having some champions around your life. I mean, aside from that, actually, I don't know. I reckon everything's probably a byproduct of that initial interpersonal relationship, As you find yourself, then things start to click and you find a way forward. But I'm just real skeptical about how people treat like whakawhanaungatanga relationship building, In a corporate setting, often we'll have a hui or a conference and there'll be some time set aside for getting to know each other, which is always fun and noble. But to me, I view whakawhanaungatanga as like this linear process that just keeps going. It's not something you do for a small amount of time and then sort of shut off your relationship building. It's something that you're able to journey, with people. Once you get to know people and their whānau and what they're into and their skills, automatically you end up doing asset mapping and the stock take of how cool they are and, finding out about all these bits and pieces that what's funny in the corporate world, you've got, let's do an asset map or let's do a, who's got skills in the room, but you already know that stuff if you were good at, just bonding with people, but we tried to, I think.
If you were genuine about it as well. If
you were
genuine about it, we wouldn't need to do this.
That's what I'm saying. Everything's a synthetic version of true community. Well, corporate, I feel.
Bars.
Just blew my mind.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying though. People offer trainings for a couple grand to do something that you already knew. It's like, dude, really? Gonna spend $3,000 when my culture already tells me how to do this, but no one's ever told me that it's marketable or a thing. It's just something that I do and I haven't named, or it's intangible, or we don't talk about because we just take it for granted or something. But yes,
at the same time, because we're just about it. Like, we don't need to talk about it if we're about it. And I feel like that's a nuance of time, I think. And I think if we have to talk about it, it's a problem, kind of like ethics. So ethics only exists because unethical behavior happens.
Ooh. Yes.
That's what, I really don't mess with ethics. Like, ethics only exists purely because unethical behavior happens. And I'm like, without unethical behavior, we would not have the consideration of ethics in our lives.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Hoha people ruining it for everyone else.
But then again, it's like sometimes we're ignorant. Like, I don't know when I'm being a hoha, mofo to somebody else. So it's like, I'm like, who's looking for my blind spot? Because I don't know when I'm a dick.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I don't really hear that sort of expression said very often. Not many people are secure enough to let someone critique them, and Yeah, I know. Society's weird sometimes.
And doing it in a manner enhancing manner too, not just being like, you're being a dick.
Yeah.
But like, you're being a dick.
A floppy dick.
But
soon you're going to be an erectile. You're going to be full blown dick.
To see you in all your glory. Yeah. Hashtag all caps.
Yeah. And you're wearing tight shorts. That ego is a tight shorts.
All right, segueing to the whākū. What belongs in the whākū from your perspective? So you've obviously lived quite a, I'm leaning on the word for today, eclectic lifestyle, and your travels have exposed you to different experiences. But what belongs in the whākū in terms of topics that we're not talking about and they need their limelight? So what belongs in the whākū that you need to bring up?
You know, what I would really love to see is conversations with the hidden, ordinary people. You know, not just superstars and champions, but finding those really normal, shy, or interesting, introverted people that get missed out in consultation, get missed out in community, get missed out in the classroom, and actually spending enough time and energy to get them comfortable enough to speak about things, you know? And it doesn't have to be flashy gems and, stunning revelations. It can just be just your general snapshots from an ordinary person that lives in H-Town. Or a not ordinary person. Maybe they're just not ordinary at all. And then, yeah. But I would love to see that more in general.
I love that only because there's so many silent killers out here.
Yes.
There's these silent so the only reason why I love that so deeply is because in high school, and I'm just going to plug in, like, one of my low-key highlights of high school was this one, like, skinny park hill dude that would just always be so excited to say hello to me in the morning.
Wow, that's cool.
And no, but not because he was like building my ego or anything like that. He literally, when I took the time to actually get to know him, so funny, so smart and intelligent and witty. So in a way, he kind of became my low-key plug-in for like sassy comments, because I'm like, oh, what do you think about this? And they're like, oh, you should definitely add the bitch in the end. And I'm like, okay, wait, let me say it again. And then when I said it with the bitch in the end, boom, like I was like, okay, so that's why I'm like, I feel like there's actually a lot of peculiar, beautiful, like hidden gems out here that actually, I totally mess with that.
Yeah. I just think that's a big thing everywhere, you know. I've just been thinking about it a lot because, for example, I mean, I work at council, so there's a big effort in consulting the community. But often if you do a status quo consultation, for example, you put it up on Facebook, hey, community, we want to ask you about a question about this. In general, you attract certain demographics, certain ages, certain ethnicities, you know, and then if that's enough, then you have just perpetuated that sort of inequity around not consulting all these marginalized and minority groups. So, yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing conversation in our circles and with other community practitioners about how do you meaningfully engage people without over-consulting or being tokenistic or inauthentic or whatever in these different areas with different people. Yeah. Otherwise, you just end up going to the same people over and over.
That's literally been one of my questions as well in Hui's is, what about the people who are not in the room?
Yeah, that's a big statement, yeah.
Because I feel like, I'm going to lean on my mum. My mum's, man, she used to roast me like Hundi as, but she's like, Ma, Joe, empty drums make more noises.
Ooh, that's a good saying.
And I'm like, well, disclaimer, I was like banging on the pots because she didn't buy me a drum set for Christmas. So I decided to go on with the pots and everything. And she's like, but ever since then, I feel like that stuck with me, and it's for so long. Empty drums make more noises. And I feel like if we're not doing thorough consultation, we're literally amplifying the drums out here, which is not a diss to anyone. It's just an analogy.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're bang on the money right there. Yeah, it's strange, you know, how we gather information and analyze data and create decisions for other people without often talking to them. Or, you know, I think about collaboration and
so true.
You know, I think collaboration is probably the single most overused buzzword in the people sectors, you know, in that industry. Collaboration, although it might happen, it usually only happens in its most basic form or forms, you know. And most times collaboration, or the other C word, co-design, it's just people coming together, you know, or doing some parallel play or meeting about something, but often not actually exploring the sort of robust collaboration or different methods or different approaches, or getting to a point where we trust each other well enough to fuse and experiment or to share and implement tools from our own disciplines or workplaces or whatever. We just have such a basic go at collaboration many times. So, yeah, we've got a long ways to go. That's for sure.
Oh, my God. It sounds like you're operating in deep waters always. I love it because I feel like, Yeah, this is a must.
Ooh.
Especially for someone like you in a position that you have. I'm like, it's a must. And please tell us how we can help out in any way, shape, or form. But if people want to connect with you, how can they? What are your socials?
Oh, yeah. I'm on Instagram and Facebook under my real name. No pseudonyms or aliases. Yeah. I got old and then I thought, man, I don't really want to call myself what my dance name was anymore. So you can find me as Dujon Cullingford. Yeah, so on Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, if you want to listen to some old music like from the 70s.
Man.
Yeah, in my other life, I archive New Zealand music from the 70s. So do a bit of funk, soul, and disco, collection stuff.
Is that how you find your beats?
Oh, that's one way.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say. I'm like, well, how do you find your beats?
Oh well, I started DJing about 10 years ago. So through that whole process, man, I've just learned so much. So I mean, long story short, religious, into only very certain styles of music. Got married to my amazing wife, and then we moved to Zimbabwe, and I was really religious about listening to stuff on the radio. Like, couldn't stand dance music of any kinds because I just sort of was like
secular.
Yeah. Or no, and just like uncultured, like this just white producer music. This was just my thinking at the time. And go to Zimbabwe where the main style of music being pumped everywhere is like house music, but like South African or Zimbabwean, or mainly South African house. So you're catching public transport and in the combi and the van, and that's just up full blast with 15 people in the van. So everywhere you go, there's music, people are happy. There's dancing. You go to a party, everyone's boogieing down. People are not sitting down on a chair drinking, beers. Everyone's up, jiving. So, yeah, through that experience and that whole blowing open of my life through hanging out with my wife and her family and her people, when I got into DJing around that same time, I got into DJing through a couple of dreams, actually. I had a few dreams when we got married, yeah. It was funny, you get married and you get given gifts. So, we had a little bit of money. And I had like 3 dreams in a row that I was DJing. I never used to DJ at that point, but I had always collected music like digitally. And in the dreams, I knew exactly what the platter I was DJing on. It was this sort of plastic one block thing. And then we got married in real life. Saw that same thing on Trade Me and I brought it. It was like $300. It was really like introductory DJ stuff. Yeah, so that's how I got into DJing. It was sort of this prompt that came through a dream. And then when we moved to Africa, I took it with me. I took that little block. It was 7 kgs, so it's quite a bit when you're traveling internationally. Yeah. But it was dope. Got to DJ in villages. We had full-on parties with, in Zimbabwe and in Mozambique, and got to throw down in some interesting places.
Did your family love you for that? Because I feel like I would have definitely been like, look at this Pakia boy with the beats.
Yeah, it was a little bit funny because I was, on one hand, basic, just starting out DJ. But on the other hand, I was like, wanting to learn as much as I could. So, but I think when I first started, I was probably more annoying than good. But, after a few months, you start to learn this music works good for these type of people, or you learn what music matches what environment and all that sort of thing. So,
oh, snap. So do you actually like take that seriously as well? Like in terms of guiding the mood and navigating the mood?
Yeah, that's a big, I think creating soundscapes, I think music memories and all that is just one big cool experience. So I mean, I went through a big phase where I DJed a lot of weddings, proper like corporate functions and all that sort of stuff. So it's all of it is a big learning curve because you get given maybe a baseline expectation. Hey, we want to hear some of this music, or hey, we don't know what we want, just play whatever. But you're constantly looking around the room at people, how they act, and you want to guide people to have a really cool experience, and you want it to be inclusive. But yeah, it's quite a difficult job. I don't do it as much at the moment, but it's awesome.
All right, last question.
Yes.
Given the chance to score a movie, would you?
Yes. Yeah, I would. To the max. Well, actually, I wouldn't score it, but I'd curate the soundtrack. I started thinking about this seriously when Thor Ragnarok came out, and Taika Waititi had directed it. Just seriously, it isn't just in my brain. But,
serious, 100% serious.
The main track they use, which gets used a lot, was Led Zeppelin's track, Immigrant Song. It goes, and it was like the theme song for the movie because it's an amping 70s, song that makes you want to punch somebody. But I was thinking, man, there was actually a New Zealand band called Ragnarok in the 70s who created like spacey rock music just like that. I thought, wouldn't it be so cool to have a New Zealand soundtrack for an international movie, you know? Because a lot of the tracks we collect on records are still not known. You know, they never got their kudos back in the day, but they're incredible music. You know, some of it would match the same American and British stuff of that same era, but it wasn't picked up by an international label, let alone a local label, you know. They might have been released in a lot of 300 records, and that's it. Their band died, and Anyway,
I would
love to curate something like that, or even just a soundscape for a local event. You know, really push people into a different place. Yeah.
Okay, I'm loving that because I've been thinking about sensory events.
Oh, that's it.
And like in my head, I'm like, sensory events have to do with the taste, smell, everything like that. And I'm like, sound.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've got cool people around here, like Jeremy Mail, you know, CEO of Creative Waikato. He's got a bunch of research and physical work around what he does with multi-sensory stuff. And yes, I'm interested. There's a lot of DJs and musicians and people that just love music around here that could do something interesting.
I'm not looking at All right, join us in the fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you. Fuck you. The fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you. Vinaka vaka levu and we'll check Uranus later.
Oh,
whoa.
Thanks. Fuck you.
Great way to end that.
Man, why did you have to freak out? It's a word. I'm trying to normalize.
Not in my vocabulary.
I'm trying to normalize vocab family. Have a great gluteus maximus, okay?
Okay. Bye.
Maximize your gluteus maximus.